Hi, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm your host, Brandy Fowler, news reporter for LinkedIn, and I'm coming to you live from the LinkedIn office in Atlanta. Before we kick things off today, please take a moment to introduce yourself in the comments, as we always do. Tell us about where you're from, about your career, your name. This is a great time to network with each other. As you might have noticed, we're doing things a little bit differently this year. Every Wednesday, we debut a new episode of my colleague Andrew Seaman's podcast, Get Hired with Andrew Seaman. And then the following Monday, the same guest comes here to join the show. So we can dig a little deeper and you can ask your questions to that expert. Last week, Andrew sat down with Cynthia Pong, who is a former defense attorney turned career coach. She's also the founder of Embrace Change. On the podcast, Andrew and Cynthia talked about bridge jobs, which we're going to dig a little deeper into today and talk about. So, Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Hi, so great to be here. Thank you, Brandy. Hi, everyone.
Hello. And so, my first question for you is, what are bridge jobs? And was there ever a time in your career that you took one?
Yes, absolutely there was. I'll take those in the reverse order. My bridge job was working at a farmer's market in New York City, where I'm based. And I love that it's our first question because I already saw someone in the chat had the same exact question. So whoever you are, clearly you're either looking at our notes or we're on the same page. Either way, I love it. So a bridge job, for those who aren't already familiar, to me is any job that either gets you time or mental emotional space, money. Sometimes that's a big part of it. And it also could be additional skills that you need. And that job forms a bridge from where you are now to where you perhaps ideally want to be in terms of a next job. So that's what we're talking about. And that's why it's called a bridge job, because it bridges you from where you're at to where you want to go. And this job may not check all of the boxes off in terms of what you want to be doing in your career, but it serves some other purpose that you need it for.
Okay. And did you talk about when there was a bridge job in your career that you took?
Yeah, so when I transitioned from my first career as a public defender, criminal defense attorney, um, to what more closer to what I'm doing now, there were a couple hops, skips, and jumps in between. But I got really burnt out of my first career job as a public defender. It's heavy work, it's really hard, high burnout, vicarious trauma rates, and things like that. So I needed some space. I also needed to still be able to pay my bills. So I took a bridge job working part-time at a farmer's market, selling produce, specifically like potatoes and strawberries and a couple other things in between. So I worked that job part-time for 18 months while I was setting up my business and figuring out how to make that be able to support my life. So that's the one bridge job, or I sometimes call it, for those who follow me either on LinkedIn or Instagram or elsewhere, I sometimes call it a rebound job, as I've spoken about it in my book as well. So that was mine, and I loved it. It was so great. I just really enjoyed the work, the being outside and meeting new folks, and working in a totally different capacity from what I had been doing was so rejuvenating for me. So I love talking about bridge jobs and encouraging folks to give those a chance when it's needed in your career.
I think that's so cool because one of the things that people should keep in mind with bridge jobs is that it doesn't have to relate to your previous job or the next role that you want to go to. It could be
You
something
know,
passionate about, something that, brings in income that's completely unrelated. So I think that that's awesome. I'm going to
yeah.
take a moment to say hi to some members before I go to our next question. Hi to Catherine from Chicago. Hi, Mohammed from Indonesia. Hi, Nathan from Texas. Marie from Connecticut. Kane from Alabama, and Angelino from New Jersey. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so the next question I was going to ask you is why might a person take a bridge job?
Right. So it could be for similar reasons to why I took a bridge job, which was that I was extremely burnt out in my first career. I needed to take a step back and kind of regain my footing or my bearings in my career, have some space to think while also, again, being able to continue paying my bills. But there could be other reasons. Really pretty topical for right now is if you unexpectedly are without work. So if you're subjected to layoffs, other kind of reorganizational things, and you kind of find yourself without a next job unexpectedly, you might want to consider a bridge job for the time being. Also, anyone who kind of just needs to hit pause a little bit in their career, maybe, and this is a very common experience for a lot of our clients, they've been going, really putting in the work in their career for a couple of years, but they suddenly look up and they're like, wait, this is actually not what I thought I would be at this stage of my career. And they need to, hit pause for a second to reassess and reevaluate some things before making a more intentional and planned move forward. Sometimes it involves a pivot or a career change. It doesn't have to. But bridge jobs, those are some of the common reasons that folks may take them.
Yeah. I think that that's great info. Again, it's not just if you've been laid off or you've lost a job. It can
Yeah.
be a moment to pause and, take care of your
Right.
mental health too, which I love. So
100%.
what are some examples of bridge jobs? You gave us a really good example of yours. Are they generally full time or can they be part time too?
Yeah, they could really be either. It purely depends on the person's circumstances and what's there. In terms of mine, it was a part-time job because of the nature of that work, and it really fell into my lap. So it was a former colleague's sister who needed someone to fill in on a particular shift. I was like, yes, I'm free on that Wednesday or whatnot, showed up, and it really just continued from there. So that was a part-time example, but other substantive examples could be full-time work. Anything maybe in retail or that's front facing, customer or client facing could be work. Gig economy type of work that you could do remotely. I think someone in the chat was mentioning looking for that type of work that could be done virtually from your home. That could be a bridge job. It could be kind of anything administrative. If there's any lawyers who are considering this, a common one in law, especially in the corporate sector, is document review. So doing things that are kind of project based might be a good option to consider there. But really, it could be any number of things. It could be, I don't know, working in a plant store if you really love plants, or I don't know. I really actually consider working at a local supermarket chain in New York, Trader Joe's, for anyone who knows that. I was like, people seem really happy there. Like, let me maybe consider working there. And I didn't, but could be
People do
anything.
not seem happy at Trader Joe's every time I go in there. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
that's a great, great info and a great way to generate ideas for anybody listening. So thank you for that. I'm going to go to a member question because we're already getting a lot in the comments. We have a great question from Karima, actually, who asked, how long should bridge jobs last? That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a really good one. And there's really no should or prescriptive answer here. It really depends on why you are looking for that bridge job and what purpose it's serving for you. And also your own kind of timeline that you decide to have in your career. Again, I encourage people not to think that there's any hard and fast rules around this. But I will say generally, and this might be jumping ahead a little, Brandy, but we'll look back if we need to. One thing that I do caution people with is if you are looking for a bridge job and there's some destination on that other side of that bridge that you have in mind and some timeline with that, just be careful that you don't again do that thing where you put a lot into the bridge job, work super hard at it, and then all of a sudden look up and it's 5 years down the road when you had wanted to only be doing that for a few months or 2 years or something like that. So, again, I can't answer that for anyone individually, but I would think about why are you looking for this job, and make checkpoints for yourself, kind of points in time, whether it's once a quarter, twice a year, where you reassess and you're like, is this serving what I need it to be serving for me? How could it be better? Are there things I need to change? Is it time now for me to intentionally look for that next step that's after the bridge, because I've either recovered from my burnout, or I've gained the skills that I wanted, or I just feel ready. So I would defer to each individual person. The key is simply not to let so much time pass by without at least thinking, is this where I want to be at this point in my career?
That's really good. And that actually was a question I was going to ask you is like, how much time should pass before you leave your bridge job? How do you leave it, et cetera, et cetera. Before we get into that, though, I want to say
Mhm.
hello to a few more people in the comments. Hello, Jim from Michigan, Laura from California, Janice from Washington, D.C., Anthony from Florida, Nita from Atlanta, Reza from Iran. Wow. And Iris from Texas. Hello to all of you. Okay. So I want to go back to that for a second. So you're in your bridge job, you're kind of enjoying it, but you don't want to let too much time pass before you get out of it. So, what is something that you can do to make, well, you actually talked about how you can make sure that you don't stay too long in the bridge job. So, let's go to how do you leave the bridge job without leaving a bad impression on the people that you work for?
right, without burning that bridge, so to speak,
Exactly.
Brandy. Yes. So number one, I don't think we need to assume that it will burn any bridges with a lot of these types of jobs. There's either an understanding, whether it's explicit and verbal, and the understanding clearly was this is a temporary thing, or it's kind of implied because people sort of come and go. So it frankly may not even be an issue. People might be very comfortable with the fact that some folks come, some folks leave, and honestly, that's sort of the way things are in our work landscape now, just in general. So one, it might not be an issue. Two, if you do feel like it has gotten into a little bit of a situation where if and when you leave, you need to prep that person for the transition, I would simply make it, one way you can approach this is make it a sort of like, it's me, it's not a you thing sort of transition, in which, by which I mean, you explain that, you are looking for that different kind of work that you've been doing, because usually a bridge job will be pretty different from what you were doing before or after. And it's about the substance of the work, or the type of the work, or the environment of the work, not specific to that particular workplace. So if you were to transition out and go to like a competitor of that organization or that company, it in a way is almost harder to explain that, because it's sort of like people might feel that loyalty, or a lot of emotions around that. But if you're changing to go to a completely different sector or type of work, people can't really fault you for that. That was your intention and that's what you're doing with your career. So, they really have no business getting into all of that. And for anyone who is still feeling a little bit kind of caught and like they cannot leave a bridge job, I would simply say your career is your career. And it's up to us to make sure that other people don't have an outsized opinion or weight, or that we don't give them too much power over what we choose to do. Because at the end of the day, this is your life. These are your stakes that you're talking about. This is where you want to contribute in the workforce. And that decision is yours and yours alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring the conversation back just a little bit so we can talk about what to think about before taking on a bridge job. Can we talk about the benefits of taking on a bridge job? We've talked about, like, peace of mind, income, but what are some of the other ones? Is it health insurance? Is it gaining
Mm-hmm.
transferable skills? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. At least for those of us who are stateside, that health insurance or the other benefits and perks that you might get from your job, hugely important for a lot of us. I know we do have some international folks, so it may be a different situation for where you are locally. Um, but the skills too. I mean, even for myself, when I was working at the farmers market, between a legal job, like a law advocacy job, and what I do now, which is entrepreneurship, it did in a way bridge things in a way that I didn't expect or wanted to. But looking back, I can see how it was helpful. One, it gave me a lot of customer facing experience that was different from my client work before. Two, it did show me about how a business works in a way, and a lot of those skills are transferable, like you were saying, Brandy. And then also this may sound silly, but because it was very physical work and I was outside all the time and I was lifting like huge crates of potatoes and like 50-pound, like this or that, I actually got a lot of health benefits out of it, because it was a physical job that got me probably into the best shape of my life in that phase of my career. Whereas before and after, I'm doing a lot more sedentary work. So the benefits could really be wide ranging and huge. I would say for, folks who are doing, somebody mentioned in the chat too, when I was talking about the Trader Joe's thing, like the employee discount. So there could be things like that could be a benefit. If you are a big music fan and you work in like a record shop or something like that, being in that environment might really just be rejuvenating to your soul. So there's all sorts of tangible, intangible, concrete, and more amorphous benefits that you can get from a bridge job, besides time, mental health, emotional well-being, exposure to new places, people, and ideas, and all of that.
Yeah, and I think too, like as you're going through your bridge job, make sure you're taking note of the transferable skills that you're gaining while you're doing that, that you can apply to your resume for your next role. Okay. Also,
100%.
I think that one thing that people get concerned about are the cons of taking on a bridge job. Can you talk about what some of those might be and what to watch out for?
Sure. I think a common one is being afraid that, like you mentioned before, Brandy, that the work is going to be different from where you do end up wanting to go and different from what you have been doing. And for those reasons, it's like not worth it, or it will, I don't know, cause people to doubt your skill set or something. I really think it's quite the opposite. Everything, every new experience you have in your career, you can frame that to be a value add for what you ultimately bring to the table after that bridge. So absolutely, I don't think these are detours or diversions in your career that either you can't get back on track, whatever that means, or that they won't lead you ultimately to where you are in fact destined to go in your career.
Mhm.
Another one is feeling like, I don't know, feelings of shame or like you're letting down people in your family or your community by taking such a job. And I also reject that type of thinking. I mean, I understand there are a lot of pressures on us. And, as somebody from who had a law background to go and then work at a farmer's market, definitely, I'm sure some people had a lot of judgments around that, but I choose not to take those on as much as I can control my ability to not internalize that. It's other people's opinion. They're entitled to have their opinion. And also, I can choose whether I take that to heart or not. And I knew why I was doing that job. It was serving a purpose for me, and only I am living my life. So, it was really more just about me and my loved ones, and explaining like to my parents what was happening, and reassuring them like this is a temporary thing and there's also nothing wrong with the work that I'm doing. That is also noble work. It's also serving a community, and I stand by it. So no need to feel apologetic about certain of these things. Just take a minute to think about how you're going to frame it.
Yeah, that's the key is really just knowing that there's nothing wrong with taking a bridge job and you can find the pros in it when you do it. Again, like we said, transferable skills, peace of mind, and income, which is
Yeah,
important for
I got
sure.
really
Yeah.
good at mental math while I was doing this job. Like those skills really fall to the wayside. But when you're dealing with it was a high pressure situation, doing quick math, dealing with lots of money, lots of different products, customers who sometimes were in a hurry or needed their stuff done quickly. It taught me a lot about real world scenarios, and that is invaluable.
Awesome. And let's take a moment to get to some member questions because people really are interacting, and I love that. I mentioned before about adding transferable skills to your resume, and Nathan, Brandy, and Shelly, she has my same name, are asking, how do you highlight bridge jobs on your resume so that they don't look like you're taking steps backwards? That's really good.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll say one thing that I commonly say about negotiation, which is another area that we do a lot of work in, which is the first negotiation is with yourself. If you believe that it's not a step backwards, it isn't. And it really isn't. Like I said before, everything is a value add. It's just about framing it. So, number one, a couple of things. One, sometimes you don't put the bridge job on your resume if it is actually too distracting for a person or you're working somewhere else. I think Andrew and I talked about this actually on the podcast. But if it's bridging 2 years, but you have work before and after that covers those years also, you may not need it to like fill in any gaps. Number two, if you do use it, I would really think strategically about the next, what's coming after the bridge and how you want to present yourself for that. So, what skills did you learn and pick up and practice? What work or innovative thinking did you do in that bridge job that is still relevant to the next one? I would highlight those. Number three, another option to think about is if this is like for a resume layout or something, you can always take that bridge job and put it under other experience in a separate section. So you might have one that says relevant professional experience or relevant work experience, however you frame that top section or whatnot. And that talks about the work that you've done that is super, I don't know, in line with that the stuff that you're applying for now. And then you may have another section where you do a lighter treatment on the other work that you held. But I would think carefully about, how you define your role. If you put a little short phrase about it, make it relevant or make it serve your purposes. So it's all about thinking strategically. How do you want to present a holistic view of yourself as an ideal candidate for whatever it is you're going for?
Definitely good to know. And also, Gay says, I took a healthcare job during COVID and it was a great experience. Also looked good on my resume. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. And we have a great question from Jasmine, too, who asked, what is the best way to speak about a bridge job during an interview, which is kind of like what you were just talking about?
Mhm. Right. So it does depend a little bit on the situation, but the overall, I would say the best way to speak about it is with pride. You did do this work, figure out the things that are relevant to highlight, that make sense for this particular interview or this role or this organization, and I would stick to those bullet points. So, for example, if I was interviewing, I don't know, for my own job now, I guess, as a CEO, I would talk about what my farmers market job taught me in terms of the inner workings of a business and how client and customer satisfaction and quality assurance regarding that is the most important. And here's an example of when I was at the farmers market and I made sure to, you know, go through our product or something like that to ensure that that customer felt the most heard and was loyal to us and came back again. And so that like decreased our losses in terms of like customers that don't come back as repeat customers. I would talk about like things like that where it really can connect the dots for the next person. So to bottom line that again, make sure you're not going in with like a sheepish or apologetic kind of energy about it, because there's nothing to apologize for. And number two, think about those examples you want to highlight that really connect the dots and bridge it for that person you're talking to next.
Yeah. And we talked about this earlier, but I just want to go back to it again. How important is it to be strategic when you're looking for a bridge job? We talked about, taking a bridge job for the various reasons that we've already discussed, but should
Mhm.
you have some sort of strategy when you're looking for, something to bridge the gap for you?
Yeah, I see that answer as being a bit on a spectrum. So if you are super, super, super burnt out, or you really need to get out of a particular situation fast, like it's a toxic workplace, or you have been unexpectedly laid off and you suddenly have to fill a financial need or a health insurance need if you're in the US, I would worry less about being strategic about that bridge job. The urgency there is higher, so just get something that will fill that gap. And you can get multiple bridge jobs too. We didn't really talk about that, but it's possible if you imagine like an island chain or something, there'll be one bridge to here and then another bridge from there. Like, it's your career. You can do what you want with it. And portfolio careers also are pretty much the norm now. Um, but anyway, so if the urgency is high, I think the need to be strategic is lower down on that list of priorities. If the urgency is not as high, like you are, leaving this job for a particular reason, but you've got some financial runway for yourself, or you just kind of have a bit more of that luxury of time, so to speak, then you can be a little more strategic and um, discerning about what you take as that bridge job. So, just think about where you are on that spectrum between, I guess, urgency and prioritizing the intentionality behind it.
Such good info. And also, we have a few members saying they're looking for bridge jobs right now. So, how should they find bridge jobs to target?
I would think about, so this goes back to the why that we talked about at the top. So I
Mhm.
would spend at least, I don't know, 15 minutes thinking about why is it that you are looking for this bridge job? What are the needs that you need this job to check off? So put all those down on a piece of paper or in a document or something. Just lay them all out. Don't worry about the order first. Then once you've laid out all those reasons of what this bridge job will serve for you, then put them in order of importance to you. So again, it's kind of like that spectrum I was just talking about from the urgency to the strategic. So if you're like, I need money now, and that's the top need, then I would think about any job that you could get easily and quickly that will meet that monetary financial need for you. If you are looking for the bridge job to be a little more strategic and to fill a certain skills area that you want to skill up on, then that might be the top thing. And then you are a little more strategic in terms of your networking, your outreach. Who do you talk to about are there openings and what would be fitting for you to kind of get a job there quickly with the background and the skills and the value add that you already bring. So again, putting all those things into a list of what you want for this bridge job, which is related to your why. Why are you looking for this bridge job? And then put them in order of importance and then go down that list thinking, okay, what's going to hit this top need? Okay, great. If I have 10 options there, then you look at the second need and you're like, which out of these 10 options will also meet that need? And you just whittle it down from there.
I love that. So, so good. Great tips. Which Alonzo, who chimed in the comments, is saying too, Cynthia, you are hitting some powerful points regarding bridge jobs that are not often talked about. Thank you. I
Thanks,
totally
Amanda.
agree with that. And I can't believe we're already done with the show. That's That's the
Food.
thing. 30 minutes has passed already. This has been so informative and awesome. So thank you, Cynthia, for sharing so many great tips and for
It's
joining
okay.
the show.
Thank you so much. See you, everyone.
And thank you to all of you for joining as well. This week on the Get Hired podcast, Andrew sat down with Michael Bungay Stanier, who is an author and founder. They discuss how to set goals for your job and career. You can check out the episode wherever you listen to podcasts when it's live on Wednesday, March 8th. To answer your questions about the topic, Michael will join Andrew on the next episode of Get Hired Live. That will be next Monday. Monday, March 13th at noon Eastern Time, and you can RSVP to the show using the link in the comments. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. If you've lost a job in recent months, my thoughts are with you. Please take care of yourself as you enter back into the job search. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.